Cambridge, other than somewhere else outside of Cambridge. So it is in the centre of Cambridge City. I myself actually am a practicing artist, and all the staff at Cambridge School of Art running the fine art course are practicing artists. And actually I live in London myself and commute up to Cambridge to teach. And I've been there 10 years, and I've worked on all the levels of fine art from first year to MA, and worked on the curriculum development there. So I'm quite well placed to deliver the talk today to you, and obviously answer any questions at the end if you wish to ask any. I've got essentially a PowerPoint presentation which I will go through in a second, and it will cover elements of the why we would study a creative course, but also we'll then drill down more into fine art as a subject and look at the structure and the facilities that we have on offer at Cambridge. And then obviously you get a better understanding of how philosophically and practically we run that course there. So I'll just get going, really. The first thing to mention is that the Cambridge School of Art is not part of the academic Cambridge University. The university does not offer practical subjects. It does have an architecture course, which is not actually a practical architecture course, but all the practical, vocational, sort of creative subjects are actually taught at the Anglo-Ruskin University. So that's just something to clarify before we move forward. So partly this PowerPoint has been put together by the marketing team, but also I've actually bespoke it as a creative person. So why creative careers? Well, I mean, there's sort of simple reasons for that. Obviously, a creative degree, whether it be fine art, illustration, fashion, photography, offers you a broad range of experiences in terms of its 3-year programme. And there's a lot of industries which now require people to be creative in their roles. And, you know, it's not as formalised as it was years ago. There's a lot of creative thinking going on in all industries, IT, sort of like business, you know, theatre design, you know, TV production, and obviously being a sort of independent freelancer, be that an artist or a designer as well. And some of the statistics that have come out, at least from my marketing department, are that the creative industries are increasing 3 times faster than any other industries. I suppose that's because there's a lot of online content now, and there's a lot of sort of like roles within those which are creative roles. Another beautiful statistic is that 1 in 11 jobs in the UK is a creative job, which means that, you know, when you're applying for jobs, there's going to be elements of creativity within those. And if you have studied a humanities degree, a creative degree, then, you know, you're quite well placed to be looking in those sectors. So I think there's something to be learned from that. Also, it gives you a skill set which is beyond theoretical. Of course, we've got some hammers and tools here, which, you know, there are workshop-based skill sets which you develop on a creative course, which will make life, you know, well, it will give you a set of skills which you wouldn't have necessarily had if you'd been working at a bank, something like this. So I think there's something to be said for that. And what we try and balance out at Cambridge is at least a theoretical space for thinking and philosophical thought, and a practical space where we develop hands-on actual sort of learning, where you learn how to use welding equipment or woodwork or plaster or ceramics or video editing and things like that. So there is a sort of balance we're trying to establish on creative courses, where it's obviously for creative people, but it's a balance between those two elements. Maybe I can actually get onto this. I think I missed a slide. No. So again, you know, 1 in 18 businesses is a creative business. So essentially what we're trying to suggest here is that by choosing a creative degree, and and employability being a huge element with study these days, and the financial input you have to put in as a student, as someone attending that course, there can be anxieties around, well, what am I going to do with this creative course once I leave university? And I think that, you know, that's an anxiety which current students feel and applicants feel. And I think that some of these statistics are just there to allow you to feel that once you progress on and leave HE, or maybe you go on to do an MA, that there will be industries looking for you and to employ you, where you'll be able to build a career afterwards. And, you know, there's been a long stereotype of creative courses where, you know, often we feel that there are no, you know, well, you won't make any money in that, or things like that. I think that's a bit of a myth these days. And I think that the world has changed a lot, and it allows creative people to access industries that wouldn't have necessarily been open to you otherwise. It's a little slow here. So why university? It's a good question. You know, there are different routes now for people of your age where, you know, or of your position, where you're making choices about what to do next. And I think that university has been a conventional choice, and still is an incredible experience, I think, to undergo, even though that the increasing financial burden for that is significantly increased over the years. I understand that, but university is still an amazing experience, I think, in terms of its social space and its learning and philosophical growth, I think. And some of the reasons bullet pointed here are sort of, you know, broader horizons. You meet new people, you meet new ideas. You get to improve your critical thinking and your creative thinking. Socially, like I said, there's a broadening of your horizons and awareness. Yeah, you develop certain emotional intelligence. You're investing in your future, I suppose, and using, you know, making a significant investment in your future. And it's about learning, and finally the idea of actually having a certificate, a degree certificate, which enables you access to certain employability options which you might not have not had if you hadn't gone to university. So let's look at why fine art. Really, fine art is quite a specific course. Often it's for that reason it's less prescribed, or less descriptive than a lot of the other creative courses. So it's not client based, it's not industry based in the sense of illustration or graphic design or even computer games design. It's not as client focused. I mean, essentially you are the client, the artist is the client, and in that there's a very bespoke space for you to develop your own skills, your own problem-solving skills, your own curriculum, and so, you know, so the word that comes to mind really is a sort of an openness on the course, where, of course, fine art is an academic subject. It's not just there to indulge a hobby or because you like making sculptures. It's not just there because of that reason. There is a language and there's a history to fine art. There's a theoretical space that we incorporate in Cambridge, where you will learn to understand the moments of art history that have gone before and how they influence what is happening now in the contemporary art galleries, in the museums around the world. And I think so it would be unwise to suggest there is a type of complete openness. There is a structure of openness which is based around a historical language of making things, making art objects. And I think that what we do allow is an exploration of that. There is no house style. There is no sort of concern for a political set of politics or socio-politics within the staff group. You can make very traditional paintings. You can make very left-wing performance pieces. There is a huge, broad terrain of directions to go in within fine art. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have a skill set. Often people leave fine art courses and go on into graphic design, or they go into the music industry, or they go into theatre, or into curating art. So they leave the practical side behind and go into the museum sector and become curators. So I think there's a huge area for development from the fine art course. So why study at Cambridge, really? I think that is always going to be about how a place feels, essentially. And there was an open day date at the end of this talk, which I'll show you. But there is a history at Cambridge. Here's the Ruskin building. It's a purpose-built art school. The art school is still in the actual building that was made for the art school. It hasn't been turned into a cafe like many other places. It still has studios in there. It's an amazing university town. Obviously, there's the big academic university. The student population is incredibly energetic. It's very near to London. And a lot of people are now choosing these satellite cities outside of London as preferable places, mainly because of accommodation costs and cost of living. But yeah, the journey to London is 50 minutes. And we have a very intimate teaching-student ratio. A lot of our groups, our year groups in fine art, don't go over 30, which means that you all have a very focused amount of attention and contact time in terms of the teaching delivery. So I think that that becomes more important now, because people want to see what they're investing in, and I think that at Cambridge we still hold those values very strongly in terms of allowing people to have a dedicated studio, which I'll show you in some of the slides coming up, and that the student-staff ratio is not this stretched out, warped idea of what the numbers process. We're still very much knitted to our students in a very direct way. Right, so again, a sort of reiteration of that. We try to create networks within Cambridge and London for the students that we work with. So we're always looking for industry connections and work experience outside of the campus. We try and set up relationships with Kettle's Yard in Cambridge, certain other studio groups in Cambridge, and the Fitzwilliam Museum. We're very focused on gaining skills for employability and entrepreneurship. A lot of our post students have gone on to set up Cambridge-based peer-led organisations, which are now becoming very important in the community, and have got Arts Council funding. And I think that's a testament to the intimacy of the course, really. The idea of testing ideas out, and we've got initiatives in the university where you can apply for funding to do startups and create small businesses within the university. And we have actually a very good standard of facilities. For example, our printmaking room is probably one of the top 3 or 4 print rooms in the country, because we have an MA in printmaking, and that needs to have a fantastic print room, and I'll show you images of the print room shortly. And obviously, as I said, a lot of the staff are practicing artists. We have a lot of visiting artists. As staff, we have a big network that we bring into the university and use as assets. So I think having artists on board on a fine art course is incredibly useful. So obviously I was talking about ideas of sort of showing off site. So from the very first year, we encourage off-site exhibitions, off-site opportunities. So it's not just campus-based. I think as soon as you start interacting with the public and the community outside of the campus, the more professional and employable you will become as a person. So we organise and pay for spaces outside of the university, and that's where you'll gain experience as a curator, hanging art, doing the promotion, working with people that are already in the industry. Obviously, you also get to exhibit your work at the degree show, which we encourage the local industry and the London industry to come up and participate in. And we've also started an online, obviously in these days everything is going online, but we have an online showcase of your work. So there's a physical and virtual presence of your of what have you produced over the course that we market and promote at the end. I think this word employability has become a sort of buzzword over the last few years, but I think it is important. There's nothing worse. When I was at university, I left university with almost zero employability skills. But I think that the university has taken that much more seriously now, no more so than Cambridge. And I think that we're attempting to embed that within the curriculum. So alongside the actual getting on with your work as an artist on the course, and learning the history of art and the practicalities of art, we're also trying to create a professional space where you will become good at documenting artworks through digital media, art writing, having visiting artists talk about how they have created a career. You'll have ongoing support for placements. Now we're developing a placement opportunity for third-year students. Instead of writing one large dissertation in the third year, they will be able to split that out and do an industry placement in their third year. And also we have a dedicated employability service for CV writing and job searching based in the university. And that's one of the advantages of Cambridge School of Art being actually under the umbrella of Anglia Ruskin University. It actually benefits from being in that bigger space in terms of having the university sort of supporting the Cambridge School of Art, which I'll get onto a bit later. So I'm whizzing through this a bit. But, the mentors. Yeah, I think there's a sort of like there's a key team in the on the finance stuff outside. We have a lot of visitors, but the key team of roughly about 6 or 7 people which run the course. So there's Bennett, who is the course leader, and then we have Debbie, who's a lecturer interested in installation and video performance. Myself, more in painting and drawing. We have an art historian. We have a sculptor and sound artist. We have experimental performer, and we have a reader in fine art, David Ryan, who's also a writer, a musician, a video and a curator. So there's a very broad range of interests within the group that I think is really key. I think that what you need is that. So whatever interests you bring with you to the course can be addressed by one of the staff members. And I think that not one staff member is necessarily, there's not just one house style. That's what I'm trying to suggest in Cambridge, that we have a selection of staff that can cover many different interests within the student group. Just go along here. In collaboration with the course itself on campus in Cambridge, we have a programme of study trips. These are essentially trips which are optional. We try and encourage most students to participate at some point during their course. Obviously, there is the London-based trips, which are usually once or twice a semester. and we go down to London and create a programme to look at the museums there and the galleries. There is the Cambridge scene, which is a more local scene, but nonetheless quite an interesting scene with Kettle's Yard, Wising nearby, Home Gallery. And then there's an international programme where we have study trips to all sorts of places, Paris, Venice, Amsterdam, Madrid, Berlin. And we try and do those every 2 years, the big international trips. And those are semi-subsidised by the university, but obviously there is a certain amount that you would have to pay as a student, but they are subsidised, and we find those incredibly popular, that people still like going on those international city trips. Obviously, when the world reopens and we're able to do that, we'll be organising one as soon as possible, pending another pandemic. But I think that those are amazing opportunities to experience different work in different museums and see how architectonic space affects the curation or the placement of artworks in different cities. And I think that, you know, that's part of widening your cultural experience and your understanding of how the industry works outside of the campus. And I think those are really fantastic opportunities, and we still find those philosophically important to deliver on the course. So as I said before, the Ruskin building itself is based around a Ruskin gallery. The Ruskin gallery is a double height space in the middle of the Ruskin building, which is used for touring exhibitions and student exhibitions and the degree shows at the end of your course. It's a huge space, a beautiful space, and it becomes the centre of the art school in terms of all the studios, all the workshops are essentially based around that central gallery space. And it has the facilities for digital display, huge projectors and screens, which can really allow different media to be displayed in there. There's a huge investment in the gallery a few years ago that allowed for it to be upgraded to incorporate large video installations and sound installations. The fine art studios themselves, they dedicate spaces, they're not shared spaces. They are usually divided into year groups. So first, second and third year have their studio spaces. Within those spaces, every student has a dedicated space. And the sizes of your dedicated space increases traditionally over the years as you progress through the course. That means you don't have to move out all the time. You can leave your things there. You can make it into a type of home where you have access to that from 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening and at weekends. So the actual access to the students is pretty much all the time. Like I say, you don't have to move out halfway through the week and allow some other students to use it. It's basically your space. Obviously, there is your dedicated space, but there are also spaces outside of that which are really facilities, things like we have a photography course, so the black and white photography labs that we still have in place, that a lot of universities have got rid of actually. You can still do wet processing and digital processing, and fine art students have access to that. They also have access to all the lab Mac suites that the graphic designers use, wide format printers and scanners, and we also still have a life room. It sounds slightly bizarre, but that we still have this dedicated life room where we run life drawing sessions. I think twice a week, what used to be twice a week in the evenings, and those would be free sessions where you could just sign up, go along, and still continue certain traditional drawing experiences like life drawing. I think that we promote radical thinking, if that's one way of putting it, but we're also happy to see students sit and work on traditional skills as well. So there's not an expectation for everyone to always be thinking outside the box. You can work in a more conventional way, and we still have the facilities to do that. We have very specialist printmaking workshop, like I've said. That is, like I say, one of the top printmaking workshops in the country outside of the Royal College, where there is pretty much we still have letterpressing and huge screen printing and etching and all the sort of things one would need to explore printmaking to its fullest. We've just extended the 3D workshops and actually created different annexes for those, where there is a wet workshop and a dry workshop. So you can work on more contemporary material processes like 3D printing or laser cutting, metalwork, welding. And then we have an annex where you can work on plaster and clay. And we have installation rooms within those that you can book and explore the concept of installation and room space. Again, I said we have specialist film and photography equipment and Mac and PC access. So there's this huge broad range of facilities that are available to you as fine art students. All the spaces have open access. That means that at some point in the day, you can go in there and use those facilities how and when you want. All the rooms are technician managed. So essentially, there is always a technician in those spaces. We have about 3 full-time, well, actually maybe 3 technicians in the 3D workshop that are a mixture of full-time and part-time. We have dedicated computer technicians and we have dedicated photography technicians. So there's always opportunities to sign up for one-to-one technical support as well, not just go in and use the spaces. You can actually sign up for technical assistance. That's something else we brought in because we felt that people really needed extra support with those practical elements. As academics like myself, there is only so much we can do in terms of practical support. That's why we have a dedicated technical support team as well. I've been through this already, but essentially here are some sort of typical pathways which you might look at post degree. One of the things we always would love people to do is to go on and be artists. I think that's a huge ambition for certain people going onto a fine art course, and we fully promote that. You know, regardless of the employability structure within the university, we think that becoming an independent fine artist is truly valuable to society. You could go on and teach. You could become a curator, like I mentioned. You could work in education, community education, art therapy. You could become involved in the gallery system and work as a sort of commercial gallery curator. You could go into arts management, lots of different art management things now in terms of marketing, studio spaces, galleries. You could go into filmmaking, photography, become a designer, become a set designer, illustrator. So there are huge pathways leading out of fine art. But like I said before, the initial philosophical idea of fine art is that there isn't a client. The client is you, and you essentially manifest your curriculum within it. And as academics and as technical staff, we're there to facilitate that and to professionalize it and to give it context through tutorials, through critiques, through exhibition opportunities, through workshops, through visiting artists. And I think that's really part of our role as academics. This is where I get to sort of like, you know, talk about certain alumni, graduates that go on and do that. You know, we've had past students that have won the Woon Art Prize, which is a £10,000 prize. We've had people go on and study at the Royal Academy, at Chelsea, at Camberwell to do their MAs. We've gone to people that have worked in the Tate Gallery, education department. So that you can see that there is that people go on from Cambridge. It's not just a college which won't allow you progression. It does allow you progression, and I think we've had a lot of success getting our students onto very hard MAs in London or actually in different countries. So I think that we're quite proud of that. Actually, we take the student from the first year, progress them to the third year, and still support them in their sort of further education outside of MA, be it PhD studies. Obviously, like I said, there's no real substitute in terms of understanding whether Cambridge or the course is going to be right for you from a slideshow. It's traditionally the same. You have to go somewhere, you have to understand the city, you have to understand how you might live for 3 years in that city, and how the architecture of the college and the energy of that college resonates with you on the ground. And that's why we still do, obviously, open days. At the moment, they're online, but at some point we will go back onto physical open days with those. And I think they're going to be very important. The next open day is 24th of April. You'd have to check. We're still confirming whether that's going to be physical or online. I think it's going to be an online open day, but there will be ones coming up near the summer where they will hopefully be physical again. So please do log on or check out the Cambridge School of Art website to find out about that, or book a place, really. And academics and students are again on board during those days to answer any questions in a live feed you might have about admissions or the course structure. I actually do have one other small talk that I wanted to bring up about the course structure. I'm going to try and open it and see if, just wanting to see if this is it. No, that's the same. Apologies for this. I'm still getting my head around the
I think just whilst Rob's doing that, if there are any questions for Rob, do, as I say, post them in the chat for us, and I'll make sure that we get those answered for you.
Yeah, just bring up this extended PowerPoint, which I wanted to bring up because if it loads, that is. I just wanted to look at how the course structure is run. It is loading. It's just a big document, that's all. It's like an extended version of the PowerPoint I just did, and there's actually some extra images of some of the students' work, but we'll just see if it's happy to load. Unfortunately, we always have to. Let me just see if I've got any chat. Not in the moment. I'm hoping this won't take too long to load, but apologies for this.
Maybe whilst it's loading, Rob, like at A level, for example, within our visual arts, there's lots of kind of practical creative making taking place, but also students are expected to kind of write about artwork as well. Does that kind of carry on into a degree? Is there an element of kind of written work on a degree for fine art?
Yeah, there is. That's why I was hoping to get up this image, but I can talk about it whilst we're loading it. Right. Essentially, what we say is that the course is 80% practical and 20% written. So from the first year, we have a contextual studies element to the course, which is where you will have seminars with an art historian, essentially, and you'll debate and look at certain concepts throughout art history, and you'll be expected to write texts about that, essays essentially, and those will be accessible things. They go towards your final degree marks. So yeah, there is certainly a formal, accessible written element on the course which contributes to your overall degree. And in third year, like I said, there is still what we consider a traditional dissertation space where you'll link that to your studio practice as an artist and create a text, an extended text, which goes into that. That was 3,000 words, I think it is these days. If you take the placement offer, but if you don't take the placement offer, I think it is 6,000 words, I believe. It's starting to load. What I actually wanted to look at was that breakdown that you mentioned of how the modules work within the yearly progression from level 4 to level 6. So I'd like to try and do that once the PowerPoint loads. I'm afraid we're at the mercy of the IT. I'm not sure if Chloe wants to come in and say anything whilst we're waiting for the PowerPoint to load.
I mean, it's just in terms of questions, like if there's any questions for me, I'm quite happy to answer anything like that.
Right, that's good, because now it's opened. Perfect. So then just letting it open here. There's a slide here. Actually, it's so boring, this slide. Sorry about this. But it's quite an important slide, because what it shows you is that progression and how we divide the time essentially in it. So level 4 is first year, level 5 is second year, level 6 is third year. And in each year, this green box is what we call the core module, which is essentially a big module, 60 credit module, year-long module, where you start in late September, October, and you go through till May, and there's no assessment point throughout that year except at the end. And that is your time as an artist. So essentially what we do is we create this large module, which is you in the studio making work. There's obviously a timetable around that. There's seminars and tutorials going on, but that really is your space as an artist, as a creative person, to develop your own work, whatever that might be. And so that is essentially developing your practice, developing your research as an independent person at university. And obviously, university philosophy is very different, obviously, to A-level. That there's a lot more independence. There's a lot more expectation that you will, as a person, bring something with you, a study interest that you will develop as an independent learner at university. However, outside of that, there are always smaller modules which allow you to broaden out certain skill sets. So, like in the first year, there is always a contextual module, which I say is the written element, and then there are the studio modules. So you might take an approaches to drawing and an experimental practice module in the first year. So those will open you up to different ways of thinking that we talked about before in the PowerPoint. In the second year, you will probably have options. So you could take printmaking, you could take filmmaking, but there's still the contextual elements. And then in the third year, that really condenses down into two things. One, your work as an artist, core module made a project, and your dissertation research project, which is the written element or the written stroke placement element. So just wanted to look at that quickly, because one of the things we don't do at Cambridge, which some of you might be thinking is, well, what's the first year like? Is that going to be like a foundation course? The answer is sort of no. In the smallest way I could say it, we allow you to do what you want. There are ways of experimenting across media. What we don't do at Cambridge, we don't use the first year as a foundation rerun or substitute. We go straight in, really. We go straight in with undergraduate philosophy. We don't try and dress the first year up as a foundation course. So I think that's we need to really make that clear. And the reason for that is because I think that there is an expectation for independence, and I think that is fully supported, like I say, in the structure of Cambridge, but we're not there to create a sort of, that foundation experience. We're not setting projects. in the core module, you will not get a theme, you will not get a project name, you will not have to do projects over 6 weeks and hand in. That core module, your module as an artist, runs for the whole year without handing. So I just wanted to make sure that's really clear in the structure, because, you know, it's pretty scary as well, because it means that you have to start thinking immediately about what you are as a person and what you are as a maker and as a creative person. And I think that's fantastic, actually. I think that really allows people to develop their interests earlier in the course. And it's just...
We've got a question, Rob, that I think is quite related. So you're kind of saying that the first year isn't a substitute for a foundation. So yeah. Is there an expectation that students come to you having already done a foundation, or can students apply straight from A level? What do you usually look for an intake? That's come from Martha.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Martha. The expectation is that we don't require foundations anymore for you know, to generate an interview process. So essentially, we take students straight from A level or from foundation, depending on the strength of their portfolios. We're not looking. We actually keep the credit threshold quite low at Cambridge, just because we're really interested in the person and what they're bringing. So it's all based on portfolio, whether that be you in days gone by, that used to be a physical online interview, a physical on-campus interview, where you'd bring a portfolio, you'd have a one-to-one interview, not a group interview, and you'd be assessed on your portfolio work. So no, the answer is that we don't prioritise over foundation anymore. You don't have to have one. It isn't a stipulation. People progress at different points, and we understand that, and we try to accommodate where people are in their lives. Some people might be just ready to do undergraduate study straight from A level. Some people might not be.
No, thank you. It might be a good time to maybe bring Chloe in, because I'm conscious of time as well, because there's more talk starting at 12, so we've probably got just under 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. So Chloe, we haven't got any questions coming in at the moment, but if there are questions for Chloe, who is a student at the moment, please do post them. But I wonder, Chloe, if you could talk to us a little bit about your experience. You know, what did you do? Did you do a foundation, and kind of what's your experience like, I guess, now that you're at university?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do a foundation. There wasn't a foundation available for my course, and only certain courses have foundations. And I mean, it will be in the description of the course. It will say, so my course is film and media, but it would say film and media with foundation year, and then there'll be probably another one with film and media. But when you put your application in, and you just maybe put forward for a normal film and media, they might then come back to you and say, well, actually, if you was to take a foundation year, I think it would help you better. And I mean, the lecturers are super supportive at the university, and they have been throughout the 3 years. I mean, I have had pretty tough time at uni, and I mean, COVID did hit on that. But the lecturers have been so supportive, on call pretty much whenever you need them. And with Teams and Zoom, it makes it quite easy to have a meeting. You can just pop an email over and be like, oh, I'm really struggling because I'm struggling with my dissertation. Can I have some help? And I have now weekly meetings with my mentor. We have meetups as a group, so we'll kind of just all jump on and have a meeting. We're hoping that we can have another meeting just to join as a group before we graduate. So we have been really there for each other during COVID, and essay deadlines and things. Essays aren't as hard as what you think they are. If you can sit A levels, because I was told at school A levels is like, one A level is like sitting a degree, and I took 3 A levels, and I mean, as soon as you came into uni, it was like, oh wow, like it's not as difficult as what it seems. It's just the application that is the difficult part, because at A level and at college, you are taught the skills that you need for university, whether that's researching, going through and finding articles, the work pace, deadlines. I mean, deadlines at college can sometimes be like, oh, I forgot my homework, and they're like, oh, it's okay, bring it in tomorrow. But uni is not like that. Deadlines are really strict. So you've got to make sure that you stick to them. And I'm assuming it's the same through art with physical deadlines, because I have had physical deadline that you had to go up to the student services and give in your work. So, I mean, if anybody is thinking of university, definitely go to an open day, definitely go through UCAS and speak to the teachers at school or at college, because the majority of them have been to university themselves. And they know what the UCAS application is like. I mean, I'm going through the UCAS application myself again, and I think, oh my gosh, like giving personal statement talks, and I can't even write my own personal statement because I find it difficult. But definitely ask for help, whether it's through current students at university or your teachers, or go into a personal statement talk at an open day or an applicant day. It will be super helpful for you.
Brilliant, thanks, Chloe. Again, conscious of time, maybe just a question from me, really, for either Chloe or yourself, Rob. It's quite typical, I guess, here in our A-level provision. You know, we offer 5 different strands of art and design. You know, fashion and textiles, photography, fine art, graphic design, and critical and contextual studies. It's quite common for those disciplines to blur, really. So you might see a student doing an animation in fine art, or even doing something with textiles. Does that continue as we move into degree level? Like, you know, I think I know the answer looking at the diverse range of skills that your lecturing team have, but it's not just like, you know, I'm a painter, I'm going to do fine art. It can be really broad in terms of what a student might see their practice as being at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'll pick up this first, and then Chloe can jump in as well if she wants. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, these days there are so many eclectic ways of approaching making, and I think that, you know, like I said before, we haven't got a house style. So, you know, like we have people that use textile all the time in fine art. We have people that use performance. We have people that use online technology. We, you know, we have people that just use text, you know, write manifestos. I mean, I think that essentially you know, we encourage that cross-fertilization or that blurring, like you say, because if it makes sense to the student, then why not promote it to them as a way of dealing with it? And I think that if people want to paint, they can, but if people want to make sculptures out of metal, sure, that's their, you know, that's their choice. But certainly, yeah. Sorry, Chloe. Yeah.
No, you're all right. I mean, we as film and media students, we actually go across to fine art students and fashion students and say, oh, we need a costume, or oh, I can't draw, can you draw me something? And it helps their portfolio as well as ours, and it's quite nice. And I mean, I have enjoyed that with Cambridge, that we can go across to different people and go, oh, to the drama students, oh, I've got to make a film, can we borrow you, or can we use some of your time? And they're like, yeah, as long as you put me in it and I can use that. So we're quite good at using everybody. And I mean, further going back in your presentation, Rob, one of my lecturers is actually on the list, and I was quite surprised that she was on there. But again, it's quite nice to see that lecturers, I mean, she teaches me global film, and then on there she's teaching 19th, 20th century art history. So you can see through the lecturers as well that they are quite diverse. They kind of go across platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that the subjects aren't protective of their resources. I think that that's really key, is that you're not going to get like, you know, turned away at the door type sort of thing, you know, like, because, you know, you haven't got the right sort of like course credentials. It's like, you know, if you want to go and use a sewing machine in fashion, they're pretty happy for you to do that. So like, I think that, you know, that there's a just sort of generosity amongst resources, which I think allows that type of activity to flourish.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both, Rob and Chloe, for joining us today. That's been really informative, really useful. So thank you. And thank you to all of you, all the students that have joined the call. Obviously, if you've got more questions that you think of after the talk, you know, please do reach out to us. Our careers team, led by Joe, is on hand to help all the time. Or I'm sure you can speak to your visual art lecturers here as well. Okay, so I'm conscious that a lot of students will be making their way to other talks that start at 12 o'clock. So I hope you have a good rest of the day in this programme that we put forward for you. So yeah, again, thanks Chloe, thanks Rob for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, and just say Louise from just said you can also use our chat service to speak to us directly at the university. So that's just gone in the chat. So there's a sort of link to that there. So please feel free to do that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. All right, brilliant. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.